In this video, we'll introduce ellipses. The standard form of an ellipse is shown. It's an equation that has x squared and y squared. There'll be denominators, which represent a squared and b squared, where a and b are not the same number. The expressions will be added together, and it will equal 1. So here is a lot of information to take in, but what we want to pay attention to are the key points here of the standard form of an ellipse. First of all, it will be an addition equation that's equal to 1. You can find the center of an ellipse similar to how we found the center of a circle by looking at the x and the y squared terms. The center will be h comma k. An ellipse will be an elongated circle. You can think of it like that, and it will either be parallel to the x-axis or the y-axis. It'll be parallel to the x-axis if the number under the x squared term is bigger than the number under the y squared term. That's how you know it's parallel to the x-axis. So what we're going to do is take a look at a couple of graphs, and this is a matching activity, and we're supposed to match the graphs to one of these equations that are shown. So we'll look at our first graph, which you can see is the axis, the major axis is parallel to the x-axis. So I expect that the number underneath the x squared term will be bigger than the number underneath the y squared term. I also want to look at the center. First of all, is 0, 0. So it's just going to be plain old x squared and plain old y squared. The vertices of the major axis here are 4 and -4. So what we're going to do is square those, and we're going to understand that the number underneath the x squared term will be 16. As far as the vertices on the y-axis, it's 2 and -2. So when I square that, I should get 4 underneath the y squared term. So the equation that matches this graph is x squared over 16 plus y squared over 4 equals 1. Now the next example, my major axis is my y-axis. The vertices are 2 and -2. So when I square that, I should get 4 underneath the y squared term. As far as my x-intercepts, it's 1 and -1. When I square that, I get 1. So the equation that makes sense for this graph is x squared over 1, or just x squared, plus y squared over 4 is equal to 1. So now let's take a look at the next problem. We are asked to graph this equation by hand. We're supposed to find the vertices and the foci and to verify my results with the graphing utility. Well, what I'd rather do while we're just kind of getting our feet wet with ellipses, I'd rather start with the graph using Desmos. And the graph of this ellipse looks like this. And what I want to do is kind of make sense of the characteristics of the graph and see where I can notice those characteristics in my equation. So the first thing I do notice is the center is 0, 0. I notice that my major axis is my y-axis. Those vertices are 5 and -5 for my y-intercepts. My x-axis is my minor axis, and these intercepts are 3 and -3. So the center I can identify from the graph is 0, 0. Now I can identify the center from my equation because I had x squared and y squared, and there was nothing that I was subtracting away from either x or y other than 0. My major axis on my graph is the y, because it's longer in the y direction than the x direction. How I can see that in my equation is the number underneath the y squared term is bigger than the number underneath the x squared term. My y-intercepts I can get not only from my graph, of course, which is 5 and negative 5, but I could take the square root here of this 25. I know the square root of 25 is 5, and so from my center of 0, 0, I could do 5 up and 5 down from that. So 0, 5, and 0, negative 5. For my x-intercepts, I can see them on the graph as 3 and negative 3. How I can get that from my equation is take the square root of b squared in this case. The square root of 9 is 3. And I'm going to go 3 to the left and 3 to the right of my center. So I get negative 3, 0, and 3, 0. Now the foci will not be obvious from the graph. I mean, I know that they're going to lie along the major axis, the y-axis. But we're going to need to do some math to figure out the foci. We're going to do c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. We're going to substitute in the numbers from the equation for a squared and b squared. We get that c squared is 16, c equals 4. So what that means is we want to go from my origin 4 up and 4 down. And so that's where we're getting 0, 4 and 0, negative 4 from my equation.